Good morning and welcome to Babble Before Breakfast. I'm your host, yours truly, and as usual we will stick to the same 3 rules. However, today, since I'm not going to the usual office, I have some task to finish somewhere else. So let's tweak our rule a bit from getting to work in one piece to getting to wherever I'm going to in one piece. And since it has been a couple of days since I last talked about languages, I want to steer my wheel back a little to this particular topic. And the main focus of the video today is on the idea of failure. So strap yourself. I will be very blunt, so no sugarcoating, because I feel like it's not going to be a productive talk if I have to sugarcoat things. So yeah, let's start with the 2 main culprits that stop people from succeeding in learning languages. But then again, this doesn't only apply to languages. This is also for anything, like just learning anything in general, any skills in general. And the first of the culprits is expectation. People like you and me, those who want to learn language, those who decide to learn language or decided to learn language, and those who can manage to find ways to start learning language, I would like to believe that we are quite intelligent to a certain level. And because of that, I would like to believe that we all know what to expect, right? We all understand expectations. However, almost every language learners, they fall victims to this, not the expectation itself, but the downplaying of the expectation. We always, I know it's not like overestimating our skill or anything like that. It's not like being arrogant or things, but we always, want to believe in ourselves, right? We always want to believe that we can achieve things, we can do things. And a lot of time we end up setting a little too high of expectation when it comes to what we can achieve. And, for example, like when you start learning language, you just made a plan that, hey, I'm going to study 5 grammar points a day. I'm going to study 10 vocabulary a day. If you're also studying languages that have their own writing system, you'll be like, okay, now I'm also studying different kind of writings, this much a day. When you start the learning, you have this like, you're feeling very hype, right? You're enjoying the process a bit, right? Because you haven't hit the initial plateau yet. And you make a lot of plans, and you follow through for a good quite while. And then, one day you just have a bad day at work or something, and you're like, you know what, I will do double tomorrow. I'm not in the mood today. And then the next day something came up, and then that happened for like 3-4 days. And then you look at your backlog of your study, and you're like, yeah, I'm done. And that's the thing. I know it sounds a bit sad, but it's just reality that most of us that want to learn a skill or a language will not succeed. And I don't know, and I don't really care how you feel about that particular statement, but that's just the truth. Because when you're learning skills, especially language, you need to have this like crazy willpower to keep going, because consistency is one of the main things that you need. The methods and the styles and the how to call it, teachers and all these things, the mentors, they do help you, speed up certain process. But at the end of the day, it's usually ourselves. that do that, and it's difficult, especially when you don't have the necessity factor. In my case right now, I'm studying Japanese every day. Like I'm studying, putting a lot of efforts, making sure I'm studying kanjis, vocabs, grammar. I'm doing that every day consistently, not including on weekends. And that's because I'm in Japan right now, and if I want to get a better job, if I want to do things right, integrate to society, I need to be good at the language. And because I have this necessity factor there, at least in my opinion, for me, I do not accept the idea that of not learning the language or not trying to learn the language at all if you're staying in a country. So for me, this is a necessity factor, and that is what keeps pushing me. And if you don't have things like that, it's just very difficult. It's just hard to find motivation after a certain point. And unlike other skills like, for example, musical instrument, learning language is actually more brutal in a sense. Like, for example, if you learn a guitar, for example, or a piano, right? You have this very powerful initial kick, initial dopamine hits, because you learn 3-4 songs, you learn 3-4 chords. Now you can play hundreds, if not thousands of songs. If you're I don't know, if you're like a Taylor Swift fan or something, you probably can play her entire catalogs of songs after learning 5 chords or 6 chords, and that really boosts your interest, right? That's really give you this sense of achievement there. But language doesn't have that kind of kick, because on the other hand, it's actually quite the opposite. Because when you pick up a book, you start learning, or you just go to class or whatever you do, right? And then you start learning for a week, 2 weeks. You're like, okay, I'm starting to understand all these nuances. I'm starting to understand the language structure. I can make a sentence now. I know some words now. I can greet people. You learn all these things after 2 weeks of studies. Then you try to practice talking, and that's where your reality comes crashing down, because your brain just your brain is not ready for you to connect what you're thinking, what you want to say, and this whole constant translation happening in your head, that's where you realize that it's so difficult to string even one sentence, and it requires tremendous amount of practice and exposure to be able to acquire that skill. That's the problem with learning languages. You get slapped in the face really soon after you start. So because of that, it feels very different, right? And able to set your expectation, able to understand that for this long marathon of an activity is the most crucial things. I have no solutions because it's different from people to people, but you need to find something to manage that expectation. Which leads me to the second culprits of the language learning evil duo. It's the lack of self-accountability. How many of you actually punish yourself for not or for missing one of your study session? I think very few people does that. And for example, when you are going through a flashcard, you see a sentence, you see a word, and then you try to answer the question. You look at the answer, and the answer is slightly off. How many of us actually just close one of our eyes and be like, okay, it's okay, I can remember, and give yourself a pass, give yourself a pat on your back? That's that is the kind of accountability that we lack. And I get it, I understand. I mean, I am guilty of these things myself too, to a certain extent. But but just the fact that I don't know, when you're not feeling like study, you know, like, do you kick yourself, out of whatever seat or, whatever sofa you're sitting and be like, you know what, I have to study. You forget to study for the day. You wake up, like, I don't know, in the middle of the night, 1 a.m., midnight or something, and you, oh shit, I forgot to study for today's, batch of words. I have to do it now. And, do you pick up the phone? The things that most of us don't do that. We just, okay, we can do, like, let's push it to later, right? And that is the problem. And we always give, like, excuses, I mean, like, in the perfect world, you have all the money in the world, all the time in the world, you can do that, right? And the fact that, if you look at, like, the social medias, these, like, language learners or language YouTubers, like, the fact that you watching them, it's also another problem, because you have to understand that their life is very different from you. At least most of their lives, they're very different from you, and they have a stake, right? They have to learn the language, whether it's for content or, for whatever reasons. And also, many of them have a lot of time on their hand. They don't have the kind of, how to call it, job, that many of us do. I'm not saying all of them, right? But a lot of them. And it's just lifestyles is different, right? And you can't afford to do the same thing that they do. Like, I can't remember the name. Okay, I don't want to be naming names anyway. So, but there are these YouTubers that I saw, and they were like, oh, how to learn language really fast. You have to learn 30 vocabularies a day, every day. That's such a stupid advice. Nobody can do that. You learn 30 today, you learn 30 tomorrow, day after tomorrow, you're forgetting your first 30s. And these are the kind of things that, like, you have to understand, and you have to set expectation, and you have to keep yourself accountable for what's, because it's a matter of accountability, whether you can, whether you manage to set yourself a good expectation or not. If you set yourself to if you set a very terrible expectation, you're setting yourself to a failure. And it's no one's fault, it's your own fault. And these are the kind of things that, like, we need as, language learner, and I would say what we need is a tough love for ourselves. We need to punish ourselves for not staying, on the routine. Again, if you really, really want to be, want to learn a language, want to be fluent, want to be good at language, there is no easy way. There's no other way, Unless, of course, again, this is for people that are serious and, you want to get there, to that point as fast as you can. And when I say fast, I'm saying in a very loose term. So, yeah, so these are the two things, right? Expectation and accountability. If you can manage those two things for yourself, it's not just language. You can learn anything you want, almost anything. Maybe not quantum physics. You need to be quite smart for that. I'm not smart enough for that. But, most other stuff you could do. And yeah, that's, sorry, I ended up ranting a little at the end. But, but I'm very passionate about this. And I see so many people fail, not because of, they have, like, bad methods, bad technique, or they are not intelligent or things like that. It's just that, these disciplines, that comes from things like expectations and, like, I would say lack of accountability is almost like a disrespect to learning the language itself. Yeah, it might be a bit, like, I think it's a little harsh that I say that, but that's how I feel, and yeah, so I wish you all, good luck, and give a thought on that, okay? Maybe, just maybe, it might improve, your language journey. So, well, anyway, so I think I talked a lot again. Oh my god, I want to keep the video, like, under 10 minutes, but I just kept talking and talking. Well, I guess I kept babbling. All right, okay, go away, bye.